Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Waiting for the TV. Good afternoon and welcome to the February 17th, 2020 Public Health and Safety meeting. I will call the meeting to order and I will ask that we introduce ourselves.
Neil Dobler, District 7.
Karen Hiller, District 1.
And Sylvia Ortiz, District 3. The next action of business is election of officers. Is there a motion on the floor? Do we have a motion?
What officers do we need? Just a chair?
We need a chair. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's all right.
I'll make a motion to elect Karen Hiller.
I'll second.
Okay. Karen, do you have any qualms about that?
Fine.
Okay.
Have you got a speech?
I'll save it.
Yeah.
Okay. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. It's unanimous. Okay, I'll turn this over to our 2020 chair.
Thank you. Councilwoman Ortiz. It's a pleasure. First order of business following the election is to approve the December 23rd, 2019 meeting minutes. Councilwoman Ortiz and I were both here for that. That's new for Councilman Dobler.
I'll bet I can figure it out.
Okay. Any questions, any corrections, concerns?
So moved.
Second.
Move to approve, seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, minutes stand approved. Okay, for those who are watching, we are actually picking up for 2020 in the middle of a process that started in 2019, and that being a kind of a methodical step-by-step through the International Property Maintenance Code as adopted by the City of Topeka. Staff has done a great job at walking us through just how it's being implemented at this point. The committee has been through about half of it. We have possibly the whole other half on the agenda today, but we will go, the idea has been to go step by step, steadily through the code with questions and answers. Ultimately, when we get done, I've been keeping track of those issues. It might be policy issues, might be possible initiatives that are possible. Once we get done, we will, as a committee, look over and put together a joint list of issues we think we might want to address further. We will. There's been a commitment that there would be 1 or 2 public hearings at that time. That's likely to be this summer. When the committee is ready to then wrap up and have a report to staff and council. So with that, I would turn this agenda over to Mike Haugen for our items, which include, we'll have a presentation on inoperable vehicles, graffiti, and housing, and see how far we go with question answer.
Sure, I'm going to switch it up a little and do housing, because my concern is that housing could take so long that it may take the entire time, and if it does, I didn't want to be halfway through with it when it was time to adjourn. And if we get done in time, the vehicle and the graffiti are pretty quick, so we can knock them out.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm gonna start some of these slides and some of the things I'm gonna tell you two. You've already been there, but with Councilman Dodler here, kind of start over a little bit on some of it. But how we function is by complaint and survey driven. We're reactionary. We'll respond to telephone calls, see, click, fix, emails. Our goal is to respond within 48 hours of the complaint by inspecting the properties, determining there's a violation, which we're able to address. That's approximately 34% of our cases. And then we're proactive, where we survey, monitor the properties for compliance, and we do the same thing, cite what's appropriate. With See, Click, Fix, that's changing. I haven't dug in to see if there's more complaint driven now than there is proactive. I know there is, but I can't give you the stats on that because I haven't dug the stats. But See, Click, Fix, which is a good thing, is creating a lot more work for us, which again, we don't mind. That is good. If the citizens can be heard, that's what's important. We also strategically address neighborhoods where each of the inspectors is given a goal to kind of pick a piece of their zone or their area and work their way through it block by block. We had Team Up to Clean Up, which we had 4 Team Up to Clean Up projects so far in 2018 and 2019, and we have 2 scheduled for 2020. When violations are found, we notify the property owner through the legal written process. Really? I'm not trying to. For housing, we do exterior inspections. They have to be performed from public access, which is a street, sidewalk, alley, vacant lot, from our vehicle, or if a neighbor gives us consent to stand on their property to do an inspection. That happens a lot on backyards and on property with the tenant's consent. And we'd require a signed consent if it is the tenant, just for the mere fact we don't want them to backtrack and say that we forced our way onto the property, if they're worried about any type of retaliation. Don't know why I'm doing this, but for exterior, we look at weather-tight items against the elements like doors, broken windows, roofs that are leaking or have holes that are so damaged, and walls. We come across walls on outside of houses that have flat-out holes in them. One of the ones that is kind of important to me is housing numbers. I think that's very important for first responders. Is the seconds that it takes if they go to the wrong house because they have to guess on the house could cost somebody their life. So I think those are really important. We focus on it. We look for structurally sound foundation, roofs, stairs, and porches. With fire damaged properties often lead to an unsafe structure leading to demolition orders, which I'll get to. Inspections for interiors are usually generated by the tenants. We ask for a signed consent so that we can be on the property. And we're willing to do a complete inspection when permitted. Usually those inspections, we go in and we talk to them, what problems do you have? And we have them give a list of their problems. Not too many people are excited to have us go through their entire house doing a whole house inspection. Most of these people that we're dealing with that actually call us for the help, they're already living in a situation where their house is substandard. So they're not exactly proud of it or wanting people to walk through it. They have children that are sleeping in bedrooms, dogs locked up, et cetera. But we're willing to do a 100% inspection when we feel that it's appropriate or that they give us permission to. We look for weather-tight issues, cracks in the walls, the doorways, insufficient plumbing and electricity, make sure that there's hot water, and that it's running, that there's no leaks in the plumbing fixtures, that electricity when we're not seeing exposed wiring or any issues. Leaking ceilings, doors, and windows, and insufficient exits, handrails, doors, and window locks, and ventilation, and also no water or electricity. Notification, we follow state law and city code when it comes to notification. What we're required to do is either send it by certified mail. When we do this, we send it to everybody that's listed on a property that we check for, which means the owner, the taxpayer, the bank. We also send a letter to the resident. I think that one's first class, but we send them all out certified mail. We also can do personal service. We do this from time to time to expedite the service, especially if it's an interior and we see that it's a really serious safety issue for somebody living in the house. Or they don't have heat and it's in the middle of winter, and we can track down the owner. We've done some in-house studies to see if personal service would be more efficient or effective. And we did it with our demolition process because we thought that's a pretty important one. It's small enough. We'd just send the inspectors out on the demolitions. It was a huge time suck because even though we know where you live, doesn't mean you're home when we show up, especially between 8 and 5, and these people aren't answering the doors. And certified mail is the most efficient and the most effective way for us to do it. But personal service does come in from time to time, especially when it comes to larger property owners like management companies, and we know exactly where they are. Exterior violations are given from 30 to 60 days, with the usual default to 60 days being standard, but sometimes it's such a minor thing that we just give them 30 days to fix, like there's a porch railing broke, give them 30 days to fix it. A property owner can notify the inspector and let them know that, hey, I can't get this painted in the 60-day period. I can't re-roof. The inspectors are all approved to give one extension out, and they can give it for the length of time that they originally gave it. After that, if, say, somebody's painting their house and they paint the front, and the inspector goes there and sees that they're painting the side, but it's exceeded the time limit, the inspector then contacts his supervisor, her supervisor, and says, look, they're making progress, we'd like to do another extension. So the extensions have to go through a supervisor to make sure that we don't have never-ending extensions. Interior can be as short as 24 hours for something like no heat or a serious leak or a broken pipe. But we give reasonable time because sometimes an interior can be 20 to 30 days if it's something minor enough that's not that big of a deal. If all we have is a crack in a window, we're not going to tell them fix it in 24 hours. We might give them 30 days to fix the issue. If an owner complies, the case is closed as complied, or we list it in our logbook as voluntary compliance. If an owner fails to comply, the case is sent over to the city prosecutor's office for consideration. This is the only type of case that we send to the prosecutor's office, housing cases. All other cases, we either abate it, we do it, grasses and sanitation of vehicles. We take care of it. But this is one we send over for the prosecutor for consideration. Additional extensions can be approved by the supervisor, which I already said. When we take a look at houses like this, over time, houses that are not maintained deteriorate. You can just see how that falls and continues to fall apart. Here's a before
Does
and
have
after.
the house number on it.
Yeah. Here's a before and after. These guys were great. They weren't happy that we cited them. The house looked like it did on the left. By the time it's done, the entire property looked like it did on the right. The back didn't get done at first blush, and he explained to us that he goes, hey, I'm doing an addition. So he said, we'll close the case out then if you're doing an addition, because we understand that's going to take time. We went back a year later, the back still looked like it did in the before. We opened it up, they got it taken care of, and they fixed it. But that's where we were working with the owner, because I think that house looks great. This is another one from before and after. We cited it, they got it fixed. We will get a lot of pushback from these property owners. They say, I don't have time, I don't have the money. We provide resources. We can get them free paint. We can provide services for them. Other stuff that they can get for free, plus we turn them on to other grants that the city has if they're the property owner and they qualify for it. Go ahead. Did you have something, Sylvia?
May I mention?
Oh, absolutely.
What if they don't qualify, then and they can't afford it? Then what happens?
It goes to the prosecutor's office for consideration.
So the prosecutor has to hear that, because there's the working for that, there's always just that line that they can't, that, they're not under it, they're just right above it.
No, absolutely. And there's people that have strange property owner rights. Like there's 4 people listed on the property and 2 of them are dead and they haven't changed it. And they don't qualify because whatever weird reason. You also have people that do slightly make more than whatever the qualifications for the grants, but
So you send it to the prosecutor to make the final decision then, or make a decision?
their choice is they can prosecute. And usually what happens, and I'm speaking for prosecutor, but somebody shows up, the judge says, what's the deal? They look at the pictures and the guy says, hey, I can get it fixed or I can't get it fixed. There's a large percentage that do get fixed, very small percentage, and I think I'll get to it in a little bit.
Okay.
But it was a super small number that actually get prosecuted because they see the judge, they know the possibilities that it could be. There could be jail time, and there could be steep fines. Nobody wants that. So when they're talking to a judge, they realize we got to figure this out and we got to get it done.
Okay. Thank you,
Since
Mike.
we're going into the detail on that right now, you've talked about the inspector, and the inspector gives whatever they feel is an appropriate amount of notice. Inspector has the right to give 1 extension, then it goes to the supervisor, and then you're talking about the prosecutor. Is the administrative hearing officer used in these cases at all then?
Only when a request for a hearing is asked for by the
Okay.
owner. So I'm sorry, I didn't even put a hearing request in any of this stuff, but in every one of our cases, a citizen who gets cited has the right to a hearing and to be able to present their case of why they believe we've interpreted the case wrong or why the case doesn't apply to the situation that we've cited.
So since we've stumbled into that, so the administrative hearing officer hears cases no matter what they are, only if it's a request of the person who's been written up?
Except for demolition.
Okay,
Demolition, there is a hearing scheduled for every single demolition.
understood. Okay, so whether it's weeds or exterior, interior, the hearing administrative officer only is engaged if the person asks.
Yeah, I would liken it to I'm going my cop mode, but if you receive a speeding ticket, you have the right to contest that, and that's exactly what it is. You have the right to contest the citation that you received. So if you don't ask,
Clarification for
then
me,
yes.
because I knew that we still had that role, and there was a time, maybe before the IPMC was passed, I'm not sure, I don't follow them that much, where all the cases went to the hearing officer. So I was needing to be updated.
Sure, not to my knowledge, but that could be from years ago that I don't know about.
Great.
So here's a car wash that got on the verge of demolition, and they put the effort, and now it's a guy's shop, and I would say that it's pretty significant on the improvement. And it was one that they didn't want to make the improvement in the beginning. They don't want to be cited. We also do unsafe structures. We're looking for major repairs needed for exterior to include windows, paint, vinyl siding, and roofs. The structure must meet 30% of the replacement cost value reported by the Shining County appraisers in order to qualify for an unsafe structure hearing. I can't tell you all the charts and graphs and everything that we do on that. Our demolition experts know what they do, but they have this whole spreadsheet of how much it costs to replace windows, how much it costs to replace drywall, how much a kitchen costs, et cetera. And it has to exceed the 30%. An administrative hearing is set for all of the demolitions, and the administrative hearings officer is willing to work with anybody who says we want to save the structure. We have a lot of people that our demolition process is working exactly like I would have envisioned it to work, that even though we're demolishing a lot of houses, we're having a lot of people step up and save houses that weren't going to get saved until we cited it. That'll come up, I think, probably next slide. And an owner may appeal a demolition order within 30 days of when the hearing officer orders it demolished, and if they win in the appeal, then it stops. If no appeal, the IPMC will move forward with the necessary steps to hire the lowest bidding contractor to demolish the structures. I asked for a couple quick pictures from my inspectors. I got a trailer, but this trailer should have been torn down. The people put the effort and saved the trailer because we were looking at demolishing it. Pictures don't show on this one how great it is, but that house was shot and well over the 30% gutted. We cited it. They fixed everything they were supposed to. It may, but they took. We also do condemnation orders where if a house is unfit, unsafe for human habitation, and the biggest ones we do is for no water and electricity. We cite them, we advise them they have to have water, electricity, or they can't reside on the premises, and that means the entire premise. That means they can't get in a tent and sleep in the backyard, they can't sleep in the garage, they can't do anything. The intent is to get the water and the electricity back up for the people. Our housing results for 2019, we cited 1,569 houses, 1,031 were voluntary compliance and finished it off before we had to send it to court. We sent 720 cases in 2019 to court. We had a 65% voluntary compliance rate. That was right on target of what our overall, all of our compliances is, but it's the lowest out of all of ours. So when we get into sanitation and vehicles and graffiti, we have a much higher voluntary compliance rate, which I'm happy about because it wasn't that much higher. Yeah.
That would be great. What Director Hahn has been saying is that once the 720 that get to court get there, the judges often work with them as well if they indicate that they would like an opportunity, and has offered to get us some voluntary compliance numbers out of the court.
Yeah, and with the court, I believe they have 19 convictions. So you look at 720 and only 19 were found guilty. And that's still pending because these are 2019 cases. So they're going to see the judge and it's only February of 2020. These cases are still alive in the court system. But we only had 19 out of the 720. So most people are getting their properties up to where we want them to be.
Well, and what's good, I'll give you a compliment, you're gonna miss it.
Video.
There you go, you can watch it later. Years ago, because I've been involved in code compliance in Topeka for over 40 years at this point, the problem was we would get the inspections done, they'd go down the line, and then we couldn't get them to court. And so the hammer wasn't there at the end. And so it's really good to hear what, technically, it is actually a housing court with its own docket rather than just mixed in with traffic violations and misdemeanors.
That is correct for the last 3 years. I can't tell you when it happened, but they were all mixed in together. And the legal department looked and said, we're sending different attorneys into all these different cases. Why don't we put somebody who's basically a resident expert on code compliance, and we'll just do one attorney, and it makes a big difference. We have so many cases go, and they went from just filtering them into municipal court's dockets to sometimes we're Wednesdays and Fridays. So they'll have 2 docket dates just for these housing cases. But as you were saying, the whole goal of this is voluntary compliance. We don't want to find anybody guilty. If we can find a solution, we're trying to make the city nicer, and to find somebody guilty, that means they didn't fix their house. Still talking, I think I got a couple of them mixed up, but demolitions, unfit for human habitation. We have some that have been so bad that the rotten floors from the cats that are living in it, that it had to come down. Structurally unsound, dilapidated, carrying major defects with life-threatening conditions. Here's our demolitions for 2019. This is what we're talking about. The city demolished 27. Owners agreed to demolish 22 on their own, and we had 37 of them that we set up for demolition that people came in and said, we're going to save the property, and they saved it. That's where I see the huge success of this program. It's great that we're taking houses down, but we're leaving vacant lots. And vacant lots in neighborhoods that financially it's not wise to build a house. I'm not putting a $150,000 house next to $30,000 houses. The rehabilitation is the true success. And that's been, so 2016, 17, 18, 19, those are our numbers. That's what we're getting out of it. And that's what I think I'm most pleased about. If we can get these houses rehabbed, that's what we're after.
Well, and I just want to insert me too. I mean, what we had was when there weren't consequences, then you could kind of just let it sort of fritter on forever.
Yep.
And so
Yes.
there has to be an end of the line with this, and so that's a really good development.
Yeah. There's a few questions that Councilwoman Hiller gave us. One of them you asked us, do we cite 100% of the violations? And the answer is no. We can't. We're doing this from public access. We're standing in the street. If there's no alley, I don't see the back of the house. I can't see behind the bushes with what are hiding the foundation issues, et cetera. But we would like to cite 100% of the houses. Sometimes it's frustrating. We cite a house, they fix everything that we cited them for. They then take the bushes out. We come around 4 months later, and we see the foundations at issue, and we cite them again. And they go, why didn't you cite us in the first place? Because we're not on your property looking. So it's impossible to do 100%, but we're doing the 100% of what we can see and what we can identify.
But you were saying that sometimes when you're inside, you don't go 100%.
And inside too, we have to read what that tenant is wanting. We're willing to do a complete step-by-step every single thing. The majority of the time we get in that house, they're nervous. They don't exactly want us there. So we ask, hey, is there anything else? Would you like us to check all the other rooms? And no, I don't want you going back there.
Well, one of the things that we found over the years and that was really successful, similar to the court thing, was that because the IPMC does say we'll do 100%, and when people knew it was 100%, when the landlord knew it was going to be 100%, then they knew that if they didn't show up and get it fixed and the tenant eventually called, they were going to write up 100%. And it was tremendous leverage for getting just the toilet fixed or whatever it was. Let's say there were 2 things that were particularly problematic right now, so that code never had to come out at all. because it was like, well, if they call code, they're gonna write it all up, and tenants didn't care that much, want to quibble about a few things, and so it was a tremendous way to
And you're asking 100%. I can give you an answer if, we try to get 100% all the time. I'm giving you the reality.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, and that's what we wanted. I mean, we just wanted to walk through
yeah.
it and see where it's going, and there's lots of good things happening.
And I'd rather give you how it is as opposed to flower it up.
Absolutely.
You asked about mothballing. It's not something we require, nor does the property maintenance have a code for it. We don't have the training skills that are needed to do this. This is a pretty serious thing to mothball a historic structure. We have a staff of code inspectors. We don't engineers or any a historic preservation plan through the planning department who actually addresses many of these things. They don't address mothballing.
No, we looked into it. I have my email from Sasha from June of 2015 saying, yes, we can look into that.
Yeah, no,
We've been waiting for a chance to just talk it through. There are policy guidelines that can be used, and for those who are not familiar with mothballing, what that basically means is that you've got a structure that for whatever reason, you're not going to fully fix right now, but you get it secure. You get it so no harm is occurring. You make sure that it's generally re-roofing, but whatever, it's not leaking, that it's properly ventilated seasonally, so it's not developing mold and mildew and deteriorating in that way, and that it's secure so that to it. Whereas, we've been dealing with issues about, and policy issues and procedural issues about vacant structures and not liking them to be vacant very long, mothballing. And this particularly comes into play when it's a historic structure that might be expensive or big or both, allows you to, within the confines of the code, say it's okay to mothball it, you need to do this, this, and this, so that it meets our standards for mothballing, and then we'll leave you alone until you're ready to fix it up. I mean, that's kind of the street language for it. So it's not exotic necessarily. It's just a matter of a way to say you don't have to fix it up or tear it down right now as long as we're holding the course. So we can talk about it further, but that's what that is. And when we first got involved in getting in, talking to the Georgia State people and University of Georgia people about UNESCO and World Heritage Sites and Sumner in particular, we have some language, I have some language that local governments have used, as well as actually trainer architects check off lists of the 6 or 7 elements of mothballing. Pretty simple.
No,
just a question.
And I follow where you're going. I also, when it gets to historic properties, we're getting into pretty much areas that we don't have the training or skills.
You all don't have to go, mothballing is just, is the roof leaking, yes or no? Is it ventilated, yes or no? And it can be written with some consultation with preservation folks. But it's not complicated.
Yeah, and we do work with historic preservation anytime that especially when we're looking at demolitions. We got to go through a whole study, and they make their recommendations. And I believe did we go through the 2 that are coming in front of City Council yet? You got 2 coming up in front next 2 weeks?
What Mike is
Probably.
too polite to say is that we feel that it would be better served and suited in the planning department if that's something that the council wants to pursue, along with that historic preservation piece of land use and just the whole deal. Our deal is more basic, like safety and public health that's our recommendation to you, but of course, then everybody will decide what it wants to do.
Well, you have a lot of things that, and I hadn't thought it through any further than that, but we were going through our point by point, and mothballing has to do with structures, and so it seemed worth it to get it on the table. Many other places where you partner with the police department about cars or forestry about vegetation, and so you guys are the hub of a lot of connections on that. So
Sure.
Not impossible.
No, absolutely. Where are we?
See, for the council, and we can talk about it, I mean, it's not for us to necessarily work out all the details of how
Nope.
something would be administered, but if it's policy that we think would be important to explore that.
I think it's worthy
Yeah.
talking about.
Yes,
How big a mothball does it take for a house?
Yeah,
No,
That's-
real question.
that's what I'm sitting here wondering.
Why do we want to mothball houses? Don't we want them in use or gone?
when that comes up most often is when it's pretty badly deteriorated and there isn't anybody at that moment prepared to fix it up. But to tear it down, it maybe is a historic structure on it. This is typically historic structures. It's a standalone historic, the governor's mansion, the old governor's mansion, or Ralph Landon's house, or whatever it might be. Or
Right.
it's in a historic district and it is a contributing property, but it has fallen into disrepair. I mean, as we continue working on what Mike is sharing with us about code compliance steadily, then there are going to be less and less properties that have fallen into disrepair in the first place.
How many structures do you think fall into that category that could be mothballed?
When it comes to
lot,
historic,
a
yeah,
few?
when it comes to historic preservation, I do not want to speak to how many properties we have because I'm not that familiar with it.
Okay.
When it comes to properties that I'm looking at going, oh my goodness, we need to make sure that, I don't know, there's not a huge amount because a lot of these houses are $20,000, $30,000 houses we're dealing with. I don't know if that's where we do it, but are there?
Right now,
there
in
is.
effect,
Okay.
Van Buren School, Sumner School, McKinley School, the post office is empty except for 2 clerks. In effect, the all upper stories, I mean, it's not totally empty, so it wouldn't hit the vacant threshold, but basically the entire upstairs is mothballed at this point.
That's a question I was saving for later. So we've talked about houses, you're talking about commercial or,
But this is structure.
Bigger.
It could be
Had a car wash
a really,
earlier.
a big, beautiful house that's sitting right on
Right.
Central Park. It could apply to it, and I understand.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to the large schools, that's where I'm talking about. We don't have those skills. You do need an engineer. You need somebody to say what you need to do with that roof. To say, I just want you to fix the roof, is gonna go right against the historic preservation concept of what should be done. So I'm just saying that to directly put it at us, saying, have you done anything to start mothballing? The answer is no, because I think it's bigger than us. That's
Okay.
all.
Well, we can,
Okay.
just a clarification, right now, though, we're talking about the International Property Maintenance Code, and
Yeah.
this code applies to every structure and every piece of property in town, correct?
Yes.
So it doesn't matter whether it's
Okay.
industrial, commercial, offices,
White Lakes?
White Lakes Mall, exactly. And the same with the premises around it, whether even if it's a vacant lot or whatever it is. Now, we have some overlays, like if it's industrial, about how high things have to be up off the ground if you have a junkyard and things like that. But, right?
Sure. That's most likely part of zoning, how high and the things they have.
Well, but unless there's overlap, your code applies to this code that we're talking about applies to every single structure and every single property in town,
Okay,
correct?
correct.
Yes, it does, but what you're talking about, how high things need to be stored and things like
That
that's
is,
the land use, and so.
and that's what I said, there are overlays sometimes about
Yes.
something specific like a junkyard. Correct.
Good, thanks.
Okay.
Good basic question, thank you for asking.
Yeah, I wasn't sure.
Yeah,
And we use the term housing case for the structure. So even a commercial property like White Lakes would have a housing case on it.
Okay,
It's just the vernacular.
got it.
yes, and back here, one of the examples he had was the car wash
That's right.
that was.
Those are housing cases. So
Okay.
a building
It's a
is a
structure,
housing case.
basically.
Yeah, even a shed will be a housing case. So, yeah, that's what we did.
So we have to learn your language
Yeah. I've wondered about changing that to building case, but
or structure,
yeah, structure case. I mean, and it's for us. So we understand it, and it's not hard for me to explain it to somebody that includes the building.
And the premises, just while we're on that, actually includes
Thank you.
the property, what you would see as the private property, but also the public easement, Neil. So when it goes by the definition in the IPMC, so it's, goes out into the street, for instance, or an alley, or.
Okay, so one of the questions that you asked was to consider a policy to charge for responding to vacant structures similar to an alarm response.
Oh, uh-huh,
Yeah, when we respond to a vacant structure for securement, it is usually because someone's forced their way in, making the property owner, in a sense, a victim.
right.
Just like an alarm, they wouldn't charge you if they show up and find out that you have a burglary. You get charged for your false alarms. We wouldn't have a false vacant insecure. So when we respond because somebody's forced entry. So then we give them the opportunity to secure the structure, and then if they don't, we do and we bill them.
My apologies to my colleagues, because they wanted the questions in advance, but I didn't know, maybe getting them in the presentation is getting a little ahead of it.
Sure.
You know, one of the problems we have had is property owners who have not taken the responsibility themselves for keeping their properties secure. And we end up with vagrants or break-ins frequently on the same property. And so that's where my question came
Sure.
from was, is there a way, you know, if we are in fact charging them
We absolutely
for the
are.
abatements and but even the visit, when a property is getting broken into multiple times, do you double the administrative fee like you would?
It
for the
bounces up
other
to
ones?
200 on a repeat violation, any repeat violation,
Okay.
from 100 to 200.
So if somebody's not being careful about securing their property, there is a progressive.
Correct. It stops at 200, doesn't go 400, 600, 800, but it stops
Okay.
at 200. And with all our cases, with the intent of voluntary compliance, if the people take care of their issue, we don't charge them no matter how many times we go out. We have some properties that we've been out 20 times in the last 4 years, and we cited them, and they fix it every single time. I'm in conversation with, and it gets difficult because even state law says you have X amount of days to fix a sanitation issue. Well, if you fix it, you fix it. So I've been in conversations with our city prosecutor for some of those properties, especially the ones that we abate. If we abate it and we bill them, can we start looking at prosecuting as well? And those are conversations we're having. It's something we haven't done. I don't know if we can, but I'd like to get to there because I have some that are quite frustrating, that we are just cleaning and cleaning and the people don't care. One of my biggest ones was $7,000, $8,000 they owed. And I go, well, you know what? I'll win on the taxes or something sooner or later. I just checked it the other day and they've paid all $8,000. So the house is probably worth 12. So, you know.
We had one owner who, I'll go ahead and not name, who just felt like he really was working with the city, and then he saw it as just sort of running a tab and being able to pay once a year.
Yeah. We have people that have even said, I will just have the city do it and I'll pay the city. And you understand I'm charging you $400.
Well, we just need to make sure it's not cheap.
Yeah, and their answer is they go, I understand that it only costs me $40 to have the guy come mow, but I don't live here, and every time that I pay somebody to come mow, they lie to me, they don't mow, you mow, and you bill me $400. So I'll just have you do it, and I'll pay you the $400 instead of getting ripped off by somebody. And there's so few of those. Please don't think that that's a common thing, but that's a story I'm telling you that we've
Well,
been
that's
through.
good, because that's some of the conversation that, you know, in a collegial way, as far as I saw it, looking through it is to say, are there ways that we can nip some of that off? Because
Right.
the flip side of that is that gentleman is thinking, well, if I hire somebody for $40, he really ought to mow it 15 times during the summer, depending on how
Well,
the
40
growing
bucks,
season
yeah,
is.
$40 a whack, yeah.
And so all of a sudden, $400 looks like a pretty good deal because the city's only going to mow it once,
3
or
times,
maybe
yeah.
twice,
Yeah.
and so it's a good deal, and we want to still want to make sure it's not that good a deal.
I don't think there's any good deal here, but usually a lot of these guys, they try to find the cheapest person they can find. So they find people with not great reputations.
Understood.
And that's who they hire for cash. The guy mows it once and then never comes back, and that seems to be a practice with a handful of them. That kind of walks through our housing. That I'm not sure if I missed
Well,
anything.
let's go ahead and stop now and see if there. Oh no, Sasha or Mike, do you want to share the report that you just brought? And welcome, Councilman Emerson. Can't stay away. Come with the cool kids. So we just printed off of the performance portal for you the filed property maintenance code violations with prosecution. So it looks like, yeah, I don't know. That looks it's only like through 2018, so.
Oh.
It is, and so the 428 must be the first part of 2019. But at any rate, those show you the cases filed, the cases that were resolved through voluntary compliance, and then the cases that were convicted. So this would have gone through prosecution. So of that 720 that Mike was talking about, we sent over, this would be how it all shakes out. So we don't have hundreds of people
This is
getting
probably
convicted.
half a year or something.
They're working with them on the court side as well to try to get that voluntary compliance, because the majority we find that end up going over there don't have the resources to do it. We're seeing the landlords really drop off. We still have some landlords, but
That's really
we've
good
worked
to hear,
through
too.
that, and now it's the majority of the folks over there are people that don't have resources readily available to fix their issues.
And so you thought you might be able to find out, if I'm recalling the conversation we had, how many of the ones that, okay, so the 287, you think is the voluntary compliance, is half of the voluntaries?
I think the bars represent the years, right? So 16, 17, 18, and 19. But like, to your point, I don't know that that's all of 2019.
Right.
Because I don't.
But you were going to find a report that would show us how many were voluntary compliance out of the
Yeah.
court, and so
Let's
that
use
would be the middle one.
18, since that year is complete, right?
Uh-huh.
So we had 563 cases that were filed with prosecution by our office. And of those, 382 in 2018 were resolved through voluntary compliance. So they charged them, but then the court worked with them. And so whatever that percentage would be, I won't do math on the fly, it will be bad for all of us, but I can do it with my calculator here in a minute. So whatever that percentage would be is their compliance rate. And then you can see for 2018, there were 6 that were convicted.
So obviously, again, I'll beg off on the math too, but there were still
100 and some out there, yes.
80 or so out there.
Which
somewhere.
those could be cases that went on to the next year. I don't know. I mean, we're kind of getting out of our lane and into courts, but I guess the point that I know is that if these guys don't gain voluntary compliance from the property owner, those efforts don't end with our office, because the court has the same goal in mind, right?
Okay, let's say I'm one of the 563 cases that gets filed. If somehow it gets dropped and never even actually proceeds, is that possibly where
Could be.
the 80, some of the 80 some could be?
I would say the majority of them is a deal got worked where the property was sold and the new owner's taking over. You may have some where they dismiss the case. I don't know if he's got a dismissal rating here. It doesn't look like it, 'cause a lot of times get dismissed. But, and you also have some where we get all the way to court only to find out that there's not an owner, a dead owner, or an owner in Zimbabwe. And so those are going nowhere.
Or a dismissal would include where the person hustled up and got it done.
Well, those would
by
be the
time you
voluntary
showed up.
compliance.
Before they went to court.
Before, well, but it'd probably be
The court
dismissed,
date,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah,
Or
before
their
the-
appearance.
It would be the final, yeah, yes, yes. And those happen all the time.
Okay.
You know, they're supposed to go to court on Tuesday, and they're calling us on Monday saying, please come look at my house. And then we contact the prosecutor and say, we're closing it.
But
that
it would show as a filed case.
Yeah, it's gonna show as filed, but it's gonna show as complied on our part, not their part. So there's another reason why.
So 382 is 68% of 563. So that's the compliance rate for voluntary compliance through municipal court. So just wanted to highlight that. They're definitely working with us to try to get voluntary compliance.
And if the dismissal, there were a number of compliances that were dismissals, that would add to that, basically.
Yeah, I'll give you an answer of yes. That it makes sense as you're saying it.
I mean, they didn't even get to court to voluntarily comply because they did it first.
Right.
Okay. Councilwoman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm looking at this, been in this game for a long time, and I want to commend staff because it kind of seems like people know we're serious now. They know that we're going to follow through and get them wrote up and do the whole process. So I just want to commend both of you, first of all, because that's the signal, that's the message we want to send. Loud and clear, and I think it's loud. It's getting loud and clear. It's getting louder anyway. I just want to say one thing, Mike. Help me, because I get all these calls on how bad you do and these letters, and that don't make sense, and I don't see the letters. But when you send out a violation letter, I heard you say you sent it to the tenant, and then you sent it to the homeowner as well. I'm talking rental property, so you would send it to the tenant and then the homeowner, is that correct?
And the person that's paying the taxes and the bank. Because it's not always the same person
Oh,
paying taxes.
because there could be a lien on the,
And a bank can get involved. If you're not maintaining that home and they got a large mortgage on it and they find out that you've got a roof going bad, they can step in. I can't tell you anytime they have. I am sure that they've sent letters to these property owners saying,
Oh, okay.
you need to fix it or we're going to think about foreclosing on you, and then they go ahead and they get it fixed. I pat myself on the back for it being fixed, and
Because
the
they're-
bank's the one that stepped in.
so what you're saying is they're just as responsible, just like the lender then,
Well, the lender has an interest in the property.
right?
Can we prosecute the lender? No.
No, but they
No.
still have that
But
interest.
they have an
because,
interest,
yeah.
absolutely. You lend out $200,000 and then somebody turns the house into a party shack. I got a real concern when you just made it a $30,000 house, if you still got a $150,000 note
That
on
could
it.
be an apartment complex as well.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, that's smart. I just want to make sure. So, okay, so I get a notification, my landlord gets a notification. Who's responsible for that to make sure that that gets fixed? Is it do we have to look at the lease then to see, is it the tenant or is it the landlord?
It is the property owner that is responsible for all of these. If he has wrote it into the lease for you to mow the lawn, that's not my problem. It is the property owner's responsibility. So if they don't mow it, we mow it and we bill the property owner, and then that's between him and his tenant, how he bills out the tenant for the bill that we send him.
Okay.
So, yeah, the property owner is ultimately responsible for these things.
Oh, okay, that's, because, I tell people if it's in your contract, you should be doing it. you
Yeah,
know?
absolutely
And
they
you
should.
And so, but when it comes down to it, our process is we go after the tenant and the landlord then,
We go after the landlord,
Or the
or the
landlord.
property owner,
property owner,
the property owner, correct.
okay?
Now, just to clarify, because it's on page 3, the notification for the housing cases, where Mike went through that. But it can be a little hard for us to keep up. On a weed case, all you do is, so if there's weeds or trash in the yard, you only, if it's different, say, you only notify the owner, you don't send a copy to the occupant.
On weed cases, we send a first-class letter to the owner only. On sanitation cases, just like all the other cases, the tenant gets a notice too.
Okay, so on weeds, owner only, sanitation, the tenant
Everybody,
does get,
yes.
and then on the housing cases, you
Ev-
send a certified letter to the owner.
Every case gets it just like the housing case. Sanitation, graffiti, vehicle, and housing are all the same process. Weeds is first-class letter.
And
Okay, but what's that same process in terms of registered mail versus first-class letter on all the other ones?
It'll be certified mail to the owner, the bank, the tax person,
Land.
and then I think first class to the resident.
So certified to all 3 of those.
Yeah.
Wow.
And if it's certified only to the owner, as I'm telling you that, I'm pretty sure, but I'd have to go back and look at it.
Well, I think it has to be.
Yeah.
But
the only one we're looking at prosecuting is the owner. So that's the only one that matters.
But
that
you
they're
send it
properly
certified
notified.
to the lender
And
and to
if
the
I'm wrong,
dealer.
I will let you know that I'm wrong and it's first class. As we're doing it and you're adding all 4 cases in, I just don't want to be, I'm saying yes.
Thank you.
Okay, yes.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. So on the weeds and the property, and we got these weeds, has there ever been a time that we have maybe crossed in the mail and we went out there and cut it, or they cut it and we got there and we still find them?
Sure.
So what do we do then?
Okay, so the first one, you have 10 days to mow your lawn. We give 13 because of mailing. So we go out on the 14th day and we see that it's not mowed. We then notify the mow crew, and the mow crew fires up their engines and they get out there as soon as they can, wherever the backlog is. If they get out there and they find it's been mowed, we still bill $106.65 for the fact that we went through that whole process and contacted the contractor. You needed to do it by set date and you didn't. So that's where that $100 fee comes.
Okay, so Mike, let me
and
give you another scenario. So I get out here and I got cited for weeds, I get there and I cut it myself, but then I still get a bill in the mail.
For the full, like, as if we mowed it, or?
So just to
Yeah, that-
help her out, and then we'll use numbers, it's $106 is the administrative fee for having to send somebody out. And what was you did, $25 per half hour, is that what you said before for the mowing?
50?
$50?
It comes, the bill comes out because you also have other fees that get tacked onto that. It comes up to $265 for the first mowing, for your property. I know the size of your property.
So it's $265, but if she already mowed it, then it might be $215.
No, either, if she didn't mow it within the 10 days,
Right.
and we go out there and we see that you didn't mow it, it's $100 plus $6.65 for the certified mailing that we're gonna have to send as a bill. Bills go out certified mail as well, so that's where the $6.65 come from. Now, I think what you're getting at, if we ever build somebody that is taking care of their property, yes, and when they call us and go, this is wrong, I have documented evidence to show what we did. January's about June 1. We took the pictures, it's 12 inches. We come back on June 11th or 13th, and it's still over. We can show that. We've also mowed the wrong property, usually vacant lots, like 4 vacant lots together. And if you've seen those little utility flags, that's one of the reasons why we have the utility flags, because you get to 10 vacant lots.
Right.
And alls I have is a picture from 20 yards away from one vacant lot. It can look like all 4 vacant lots. And that flag's been moved on us, as somebody's picked it up from their property and thrown it. Well, we're using, the inmate crews and the contractors there. They weren't out there citing the property, so they're going off of what they see. They see the flag, they see the grass is 12 inches, they mow it, the guy contacts me and goes, hey, you mowed the wrong lot, and then we would waive that fee.
And the reason I'm asking is because, I've received those calls, so they're thinking, I did it, Sylvia, and they still billed me. But at the end of the day, they really took too long, so by the time you went back out there to investigate
Yes.
it, yeah, they did cut it, but then like you said, there's other fees.
So anytime that you get someone, you ask them how much the bill is. And if they say it's 106, you know they didn't mow it in the time frame that we gave them.
Okay.
But they still mowed it. That's why it didn't become 260 or 46 or 65 and was only 106. Get those calls all the time. My phone calls for weeds went from a daily issue when I started to, I don't know, maybe I got 20 this year.
Really?
And out of those 20, 10 of them are manipulating the system and trying, one guy's saying, I'm cultivating the grasses and you mowed them because they're natural. I go, no, it's not. You got a vacant lot with weeds. You're welcome to have a hearing the next time we cite you. And they don't ask for the hearing. Yeah.
Okay. And that's very helpful.
Sure.
Because I think in their mind, they're like, we shouldn't have gotten charged.
Sure.
We did it ourselves, and the city still charged
The
us.
city did nothing and still billed
Yeah,
us
they
100.
did nothing.
Right.
You're right.
Right. No, I got you. We're sending out again.
2 trips is 2 trips.
Yeah, and it's
Or
actually
3 trips.
it's actually 3, maybe 4.
Right.
So you really add up the time that it takes the city committed to
Amen.
a vacant lot or your yard, that's hours of time just to look at it and say, mow it. Even though weeds isn't part of this, we're mailing out probably next week our little postcard, and this postcard says, thanks for being a team player with the city. Last year you had a violation. Help us help you, and please keep your grass between or under 12 inches. If you got any questions, reach out and contact us, and we're sending a postcard to every single weed violator from 2019. I think it's going to come to 300 and something for the postcards plus mailing.
What it's worth.
I would argue that we save money by the amount of people that comply. You know, and I'm trying to figure out how many took it to heart last year.
Now, a lot of us were thinking that spring was coming today, but we know better.
Yeah.
Is it too, or do you think this is a good time to send it out?
We're sending
rather
it
than,
in
like,
mid-March.
first of-
I got all the little
Mid-March.
postcards in the back of my truck. I got to bring them in. We got to stamp them. We got to look it all up. We got to do all the labor because that one takes labor too. That's why my staff has to look for every single code violation, print up a little sticker, put it on the
Right.
postcard. We got to then sort them by zip code and get them all out and processed correctly. And it's labor intensive, but I think that's going to be shorter. Yes.
So I have another scenario. As you can see, I have a lot of weeds. What if they only cut half the grass? They've been cited and they only cut half the grass. Because the lawnmower broke down, or the guy cutting my grass just didn't show back up.
We provide our phone number and our contact information. If you run into a problem like that and you contact us and say, look, I know you're coming out on Wednesday. I promise I'll have it done on Saturday. We'll work with you and we won't come out till Monday.
Okay, so you're not citing them for not doing the whole yard?
Oh, if you're mowing half the yard and half the yard's tall, we definitely are. If you're mowing everything but the back alleyway, we're still citing the back alleyway and we're putting it in the note. It includes the alley, the easement, because you got a lot of easements.
Right.
Easements are a little iffy because if they get too dangerous for even us, we're kind of going, we got to balance it. Are we going to push the issue and then hire somebody else to mow this little easement? It depends on how bad the easement is. Or, those ditches, the big culverts.
And I'll say this and then I'll be quiet. But again, I think we need to make that perfectly clear because that's the other thing that I hear is, it's the city's responsibility. And I know that there's been a lot of flip-flopping. We did it, they did it, we
Sure.
did it, and now it's back to the property owner. And we just got to make that clear.
The only place that we did it that I remember, and I've taken the blame for it, was up in Highcrest West. That we took care of. They might have taken care of it 10, 20 years ago. I don't know.
No, they did. The city did. Do you remember? I don't know if you remember it, but
That big initiative?
Yeah, but
yeah.
I have a property owner on Golden, and that is our fight with those two property owners. Every year when they don't do it, they're like, because you guys are supposed to do it. And I'm like, no.
There
that is
are
changed.
people that still believe that and will call and go, that's not my responsibility
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not going to do it. And I go, well, that's okay. We're going to mow it and we're going to send you the bill. So your choice. And you're
Mm-hmm.
welcome to come and have a hearing and explain your argument to a hearing officer. And that's why I think it's important to have a separate hearing officer from me, because I
Mm-hmm.
interpret it one way and I'm going to say, this is how it's going to be. If I'm wrong, I need somebody to check and balance me.
Okay.
And so that's where I find it good that we have a separate
And they
hearing
keep
officer.
their yard immaculate except,
And I even have people that'll mow the entire yard except for a strip
Yep.
like this, just to
Yep.
give us
Yep.
what they think of us.
yep,
And we will still go mow that and we'll still bill them.
okay.
And it's not, we mowed one strip, they get the full thing. By the time it's all done, it's $265 for us mowing the strip. I understand why they're wrong, but I also know that they did it just to thumb their nose at us. And I can't. One of the things that I've told them is, my inspectors, good enough is not good enough. It has to be complete. And that's where they're going from.
Thank you, Mom. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
I've had a couple of corner ones.
Yeah.
Probably know who they are. It's been a little while.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's tough when they mow everything except for the little grass that's springing into the street, and it's only a strip about that big. We're probably not sending the contractor out there, especially when we're 300 behind, to mow because they didn't edge, because it doesn't say edge. We could, but I know.
Well, but if they're already there, and then,
Yes.
they have to make a judgment call at a certain
right.
point. Do you have them take photos when they actually mow?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yes. Everything's,
It's good to know,
yeah.
too.
Yeah, and then back on housing, before we switch over to inoperable vehicles, one of the things we do also, all the way through the winter, from November 1 through March 1, when we do housing cases that are primarily paint and a cracked window or broken shutter or a bad gutter, we're sending notice saying, hey, we've observed the violation, we're placing your case on monitor, we're not opening a case, you need to make plans to do it in the spring. In the spring, we're gonna return, and if you haven't done it, then we will open a case in the spring. We give on November 1st, we give 120 days out, on December 1st, we give 90 days out, and that's how we do it, so that we're not citing people to paint their house in 4-degree weather. And all they have to do is call us and say, here's my game plan, I got a contractor coming in June. And you go, you do? Okay, we can put it out till June, but that's when we're going to do it. We're gonna set it so that June 5th, whatever time you're claiming, we're counting on inspecting, we see no progress and we're moving it forward, or you call us and show us who the contractor is. So that's another attempt to work with them, because it is kind of unreasonable to ask somebody to mow or to paint their house in January. It's not successful. They can do it, but we might be back out a year later telling them, now that the paint's all fallen off, do it again.
I'm looking at the questions I sent early, and there are a few that we didn't get to yet, and paint is one of them.
Yeah.
Since you're talking about that, the code prior to passing IPMC said something like over 85%, or it allowed a little flux in case somebody had peeling gutters or, a bad spot or something like that. And the choice when the IPMC was passed here was to go 100%. Can you just address whether that ends up coming up as an issue? It could be like the trim around the windows, or somebody's soffits or something. I don't know.
We cite a lot for trim around the windows on a vinyl-sided house. There's no issues except for the trim around the windows.
Sure.
And we cite it all the time. When we did our team up to cleanups, we're citing everything. So if you have your entire house beautifully painted, your porch is fine, but all of the banisters are peeling, we're citing just the banisters to fix it. So do they slam on the brakes and hop out of their car and take pictures of the house that has peeling gutters when they got 7 other calls to go to? Probably not. But those do get cited, and we don't say, 10% or 5% or whatever.
I haven't heard much back about it, just wanted to check.
Sure.
And see,
And so
or why did I get written up and not my neighbor, and things like that.
you did have a series of questions that my plan is to send them to Liz and for her to send it back out to the committee. I'm almost done with them. There were just some numbers I couldn't give you. And
Okay.
that I've been struggling the last week to get the right numbers, because I didn't want to get called out on the numbers if I was wrong. So I'm going to send that by the end of the week. You'll have an answer to every single thing that you put down on
Okay.
there. But that we don't answer here. If there's like a small question.
Well, some of these aren't numbers, but the old code required that you painted, when you boarded, that you painted it, and that it needed to, I forget the language, but need to kind of look. And then it turned out, people had thought that carried forward, but it turned out that the IPMC just said it had to be sealed, weatherized, and so there'd been some conversation that something that looked like bare wood, really, even if it was sealed, kind of was striking, and that maybe we should put the paint back in.
We request paint. I'm going to tell you there's properties out here that have bare wood. We're getting to them when we get to them. Most of those are before we started focusing on that or holding people to that. So anytime that we're doing it now, if we cite and say you need to board up a window if it's not painted, or if it's shellacked,
Right.
then good enough. But it's hard for us to tell if it's shellacked, because when we're standing on the sidewalk looking at that piece of board, we're probably going to continue it on to court. They need to contact us and go, this is marine treated wood or this is weather treated wood. Because if we can't tell, we're not going to consider it.
Sure. Well, part of that's a simple policy tweak, actually. I mean,
Yeah.
for somebody who wants to know, if they read the code, it's not there.
Right.
And so,
We say paint when we send it to you, though.
great. And then I ask about how the collaboration goes with the Section 8 HQS inspectors.
At any time that,
Does everybody know what Section 8 and HQS is? When people are on the Section
No
8
idea.
rental housing program, pardon?
No idea.
Their HQS is Housing Quality Standards, and so the Housing Authority runs that program, and they have their own inspectors that go out and make sure that the properties meet housing quality standards. For the most part, they line up with the IPMC, but there are a couple of exceptions. And just wondered, because people are spending money to have both, and
I think it's real important that we don't work in a silo, and we've reached out and we work with every single one of those groups. And they call us and they go, look, man, we just went and looked at this house. It's not acceptable. You need to come and you need to take enforcement action on it.
Okay.
And we're happy to. And what we do is we utilize those guys to be our mediator to get in. Because people go, I don't want code enforcement coming in here. I'm happy I'm living here. I have a roof over my head,
Yeah,
even though the
they're
ceiling's
scared.
falling in.
They're scared.
And so then we hold that conversation going, look, you have tenant rights. You can't be evicted for having us called in. And if you want, you can blame it to the landlord on the Section 8 inspector, even though we're the ones doing the citing. So we team up like that, good guy, bad guy. Habitat's another one that we do all the time. When they go and try to help people and they see a house that's bad enough, they call us and say, we need you to meet us out here. And we go and we hold the conversation with the people there saying, look, we're not coming in trying to ruin your life. We're coming in to try to protect your life.
is this like neighboring properties to Habitat properties or their own residents, or is that?
You have people that ask for their help that they're saying, look,
Right.
yeah, so they show up because they're going to
Got
do
it.
whatever painting or whatever, and they get there and go, this is just not acceptable. I had a nice success story with a guy that was flat out hoarding, and it got ugly, and we called Adult Protective Services, and we were going, what are we going to do? This guy's using buckets and putting it out in the thing, plus the whole house is filled with urine jars, and the VA and the Adult Protective Services took it all. They said, we got this whole thing covered, which we were happy and impressed, because that's not what we were expecting. We thought we were going to have a mess on our hands, because if we have to go abate the interior of a hoarding house, it takes a whole lot more than us just sending people in. And I'm not sending inmates into somebody's interior of their house to clean it out. What do you got to make sure not to? So you need like professionals that are trained in that, and we just didn't have to do it. The Adult Protective Services
And they
took care
have
of
the
it.
money.
Yeah.
They have the
Yeah,
money.
and they got that skill and training to deal with those
Yep.
people.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Good. Glad we wandered into that.
Okay.
Any other questions about structures? Exterior, interior, demolition? And you actually did cover unsafe structures at least as much as anything about unsafe structure process.
Yeah, talked about what the criteria to reach for demolition and the hearing officers, and that they go through a whole, we don't want them to tear them down. We want to save every single house if possible. Impossible, but we want to.
Well, it's good. I remember only not that many years ago when Let's Go Demolish All These Properties happened, and you just kind of live and learn with those and learn what the options are, and that each one has its own story. And even though most citizens will say, yeah, that's what we want.
Hey, no, I would
Work
say
out that way.
in year one when we were starting it, I want the numbers of demos, and then when you start listening to the stories, and when you have someone show up and say, I can save that house, and you're going, I'd much rather have a house there than a vacant lot. And so that's where I'm more excited about. The more we can rehab and save, as opposed to demolition.
Can we move on to inoperable?
I think so.
Okay.
I think we're ready.
Okay, so for inoperable vehicles, notification is so that we don't it's the exact same thing as the other ones where we send certified notary. We send it to the property owner, because the property owner is who's responsible for that vehicle that's inoperable. Standards of measurement are flat tires, missing or broken windshields, up on jacks or blocks, missing front end or engine, severe body damage, and unlicensed vehicles. Just because we can't see it driven doesn't mean that it's inoperable. So there's tons of cars that sit on somebody's property for 2 years. They tag it and it looks operable. I know that there's neighbors that don't like to see that car sitting in that driveway. I don't know it's inoperable. There's been times we've went and knocked on the door though, and they said, we'll start the car for you. But we're also overstepping the code there. So we got to make a judgment call if we're going to do it. One, sometimes the people just won't go away, and sometimes we talk to the person that's getting complained on, go, can we do something with the car? We're not going to make you remove the car, but can we do something with the car? And a lot of times they will, or other times they say, no, it's my right to have it in my driveway, and I'm going to, and more power to them. It is their right to have it in their driveway. Notifications for inoperable vehicles, same standard as the other notification. IPMC places the responsibility on the owner. The city code for admin fees places it on the vehicle owner. Here's where we got a little quandary and a little bit of a problem, but it's a problem that I don't know if it's worth completely addressing. We're citing the property owner the vehicle gets towed to the impound lot. The impound lot bills for the towing and the storage, and the $175 impound, or the administrative fee that we would charge, we're not charging because we didn't send certified notice to the vehicle owner. To get the vehicle owner information can be rather difficult for us because we got to go on the property. We probably have to get a warrant for the ones that are in the backyard, on the side yard, and we have to run the VIN and we have to find out who it is. Over 90% of the cars we take to the impound lot are sold at auction and scrapped out or sold at auction. It's going to cost us more money by sending certified notices to all these people than it would by doing it the process we're doing. It also saves us a ton of time getting rid of vehicles doing the way we do it. Notify the owner, give them X amount of days, remove it, as opposed to then tracking down the owner, sending certified notice to the vehicle owner. We don't have vehicle owners complaining they weren't told because the impound lot notifies them as well. Plus, we do send it to the residents, and usually the person lives at the residence. We also go out of our way to try to prevent towing of vehicles, and a majority of my inspectors will place a green door hanger on the car saying we're coming to tow it this week. It's not a requirement. It's one that worked for me, so it's a suggestion I use. And sometimes you don't want to do it because you don't want to get bit by a dog or whatever else. But they do it. Yeah, 90% or more that we tow get claimed or don't get claimed. So financially, going through the whole process of getting a warrant, running the VIN, sending the certified letter to the vehicle owner, it's going to be financially much more expensive to the city than the way that we've been doing it. And I didn't know why we were doing it that way. Since I came on, I asked, why aren't we billing that? And they said, well, when this was under the police department in 2012, they didn't do it. They didn't do it because of a whole bunch of legal reasons. And I said, all right, well, good enough for me. But then when I knew I was going to come talk to you guys, I knew that good enough for me wasn't going to cut it. So I had to find the back history and know why we're not doing it. And so then I wanted to charge it. I was going, this is great. We need to charge that $175 until I looked at the effort and expense it's going to and the amount of people that'll go pay that $175.
But you say that once it gets to the impound lot, the police pull the VIN and do an effort to notify the property owner at that time?
The vehicle owner.
I'm sorry.
Yes,
The vehicle
they notify the vehicle owner. If it's they have so much more resources than us when it comes to running VINs. So if somebody's out of Colorado or somebody's out of another state, they can find stuff that would take us a long time that they do fairly quickly. And they also bill for they send it certified mail like we do, and they bill the certified mail, they bill the towing, and they bill the storage fees after 3 days. It's actually really cheap. But they don't bill for the first 3 days of impoundment, and then they start charging you the
So if somebody
fees.
goes screaming in there immediately,
Yeah.
they can probably get it back.
And those are the majority of ones that, out of the 10%, they know we took the car. You know, we've already told them 3 different times, hey, we're coming to take your car, and they don't get around to it.
If they get it before the 3 days, they're paying the tow charge.
They're paying the tow charge, yeah, and yes, yeah.
We had one that got towed in my neighborhood. The guy died, and the caretaker had worked it out with the complaining neighbor across the street. Said, well, the people I'm really complaining about need a car. And they had it all worked out, and they towed it before they got it off the ground. But I don't think they knew they could. This is like 2 weeks ago. It just happened, but I don't think they knew they could go get
Well,
it.
Is the owner dead?
Well, the deal is he died.
Yeah, they're not.
It's a mess, actually.
Yes, they're
you
not
guys have
getting
been involved.
they're not getting that car. Yeah.
It was still registered.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah, question, thank you. So how does the police department get their money if most of the cars are sold at auction?
That's where they get the money.
So how come you can't tack your admin charge onto that and get paid?
Because we didn't give proper notification to the vehicle owner to turn around and bill the owner.
No due process.
Yeah.
We can't bill.
Okay.
So where's the money go when they collect it at the auction?
I'm speaking for the impound lot, I would say the general fund. I don't know if the impound lot, if that money goes somewhere else.
Do you know, Brent?
Probably is general fund. I think it is
Yeah, it ought to
general.
be
I think it is general.
Yeah, we have some weird things that don't go directly to general fund. I don't have any, but I know there's some in the city that don't go directly, like assets forfeitures don't go to the general fund.
Yeah. The police department seems to have the one they get to keep, huh?
Yeah, yeah.
Sad. Okay, well, you're moving fast and you're doing a wonderful job. I'll have to unscramble,
Okay.
this thought a little bit, because I remember years, not that long ago, when people were having trouble with these, probably talking to you guys as this was evolving, was like, well, we can't go on the property without the owner, but if the neighbor wants to go get the VIN for us, take their cell phone and snap the VIN, then we'll have it. But it sounds like you've just worked it out otherwise.
Yeah, I absolutely would not do that because I'd feel that's an agent for the state. I'm sending the neighbor, now, if the neighbor wants to let us on their property, and they do it all the time, we go on their property and we take a picture, no tag. Or if we can't tell that the back end's gone, we go, look, God backed it in. And the neighbors will come on my one, we'll stand right at the edge of that property and take the picture. We can also, a lot of times that we get a complaint on a vehicle and we can't tell a vehicle's not registered, we go to the front door, we knock on the front door to talk to them saying we received a complaint about an unregistered vehicle. When you turn around and walk off the front porch, you can see that it's not, and then we can open our case.
Right.
Because we accessed it legitimately. But I think it's extremely important that we respect our community's rights and that we're not overstepping our bounds. And I would rather let a car sit there than violate the Fourth Amendment.
Understood. Councilwoman.
Thanks. Mike, is there a list of people that will come and get it for them? Like some of the elders, have called and I've had people leave me notes, but is there a list that you guys have
A list of people that would tow their car.
for free
Like
or?
a salvage,
Yeah,
salvage
yeah.
it to a junkyard.
Yeah. I mean, like,
No,
if we get calls, and they say, hey, it's an elderly or somebody, and say, hey, I don't know how to get rid of it, blah, 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 blah. Could I say, call the inspectors and you guys could tell them?
No, I don't want to do that, as a lot of people willing to take cars have a history that we don't want to be associated. Salvage yards, great. Beautiful people, their license are supposed to be what you're doing, but you got the guy that cruises the alley and scraps metal that
But
says,
I
"I'll
didn't
come
know
take your
if
car."
we had salvage
No.
yard phone numbers that we
Check
could.
and see if it's on that resource list that we send out.
Yeah, I think that would be good, that these are
Yeah.
people that, I don't know if you remember this, Mike or Sasha, I had that old lady that her husband died, was working on the camper. You guys cited her for it, the camper. She didn't know where the keys was. She didn't know nothing. And she was just like, I don't have a title. I don't have anything. I need to get rid of it. They're going to come and find me. So I said, okay. I said, I tell you what, I'm going to make a call. I had my fire crew guys go get it. We got rid of it. That lady was scared to death. Because by the time she got hold of me, we had 2 days. And we got it towed out of there, and she signed some paperwork and
Sure.
put a little money back in her pocket, and problem solved.
And that was the best way to go about that, because with an RV, you're not going to have anybody come pick it up.
Right.
They're not going to touch that.
But I'm just
but
using that
sure.
as an example, but
let me-
like a car, she didn't know what her husband had or, what
Well-
to do, and
I don't, even though this is, I don't want to make it so public knowledge that people take advantage of
Right,
this.
I don't
but what-
either. I
What I'm
don't
saying
either.
is, if we go and we tow the car off of her property, the only time she's going to pay is to get it back. If she
Right.
just lets it go to auction, we're not sending that $175, we're not sending the tow bill, we're not doing that. So she would have been okay, but I don't really want to do that, because then I'm going to have landlords going, it's just easier to have the city take them. And we got a lot of responsible landlords that do take care of their
Yeah.
abandoned vehicles on their
I don't
property.
either. That's why I'm asking if we
Yeah.
could have a list, or even just say, here's the salvage yard number to.
You guys have done a great job with that
Yeah.
resource list, in my opinion. If salvage yards aren't on there and they
Yeah.
will pick up, that's a good one to add.
Yeah, just food for thought.
Yeah.
Or I'll call Neil, have him
You
call
know,
me.
and sometimes, and Neil, we live with this every day. Hopefully it's interesting to you.
Boring.
It's getting there. I'll find something interesting
I
here in a
mean,
minute.
back in the day, I remember, landlords would be stuck and nobody'd go, and they'd finally say,
And
well, don't repeat this, but if it's in the street tomorrow
Yeah.
morning, we can come deal with it.
I might know a police officer standing in this room that might have gave that advice over the years in the 80s.
And I want to put it back on the owner to have them.
It is, yes.
I want to put it back on them to make that call. I want to put it,
Sure. And that's
yeah.
And that's
So
why
that's what's working now.
That's
You're
why I'm
notifying the
comfortable with
property
what it
owner.
is, right? And because
But sometimes if a tenant has left the car
That's
or
where-
multiple vehicles and the landlord doesn't know where they're at, then,
Right.
yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So no tag, expired tag, those are two things that we cite. We send notice and we give them 10 days to comply. If they elect not to, then we have to apply for a warrant. The judge got to approve the warrant. He approves the majority of our warrants. He does a fantastic job of correcting us. If we had ever put something wrong in the application, he goes, I can't sign this warrant because. I mean, okay, that'll never happen again. Thank you, Judge. We also take, obviously, abandoned and junk cars like this. Vehicle results for 2019, we sat at 1,125 of them. 944, the people took care of it themselves.
It's pretty good.
147, if that math comes out right, is force compliance, but when I do the math, it's not quite 140. But it's the numbers that I got off the computer. There might be one that a case got closed or case got opened by accident, but that's an 83% voluntary compliance rate. Remember when I went back and said we have a 65% voluntary compliance? That was just housing, and that used to be everything. And so we're sitting at vehicles at 83% in 2019, which I think is great, which I'm putting towards my inspectors, trying to find preventative ways to get it fixed without it getting towed, without saying put it in the street, which we never do. But that just...
I remember. If you could, please, before we move on from vehicles, talk about the, okay, maybe you've got them on the questions. But you're getting it.
So unpaved surfaces, and you inquired, you guys just redid the code earlier in the year, sitting down with the city manager, police, legal. The decision was made that the police department would be the ones to enforce that at this time. I think the city manager held the right to change his mind at some time if he chose to. What I'm going to tell you is that's where it should be, because it's setting our department up for failure if you put it upon ours. We work 8 to 5. These cars that are parked on unpaved surfaces are parking there 24 hours a day, and sometimes only for 2 and 3 and 4 hours at a time. Or they're not parking there until they get off work at 5 or 10 o'clock at night. We can't do it. We're also a department of compliance. Every single case that we work right now, we ask you to comply, and if you comply, we close the case. For unpaved surfaces, every time you take that car off that unpaved surface and go to work, you are back in compliance, and that case is closed. So the only option would be to have us issue tickets or uniform notices to appear. I've been running this with the concept of voluntary compliance. I'm not excited to have my inspectors issuing tickets. I have 8 inspectors. And to put one more thing upon those 8, I don't know if that's, and it's also, they would only be doing it again from, not 8, so we'll say from 9 to 4:15. And, Monday through Friday, and not on the weekends, where the police department has however many officers they have at the time, plus they have an entire volunteer VIPs, and the VIPs actually focus on that. In-street parking, again, is enforced by TPD, which,
Okay,
go ahead.
if we can finish those, and it was just
Okay.
a matter, we all get these kinds of calls.
Sure.
Those came from West Topeka. So if an inspector is out and observes that there is a car on an unpaved surface, what do they do?
If we receive a complaint, we forward it to the police department. If we see it as we're driving by, we are not inundating the police department with every car that we see on an unpaved surface. They're driving by the same streets we are. Their VIPs are driving down the same streets, all the patrolmen, all the supervisors, the multiple supervisors they have, their administration, and their detectives are all driving those streets just like we are. So if we stopped and called the police for every time we saw what we thought the police, I don't think I would have a great friendship with the officers.
Well, and I asked that just for us to understand how that collaboration interdepartmental is going, in that when we get the calls, people think, well, I know there's a law and those people are driving up and down the street all the time, so I shouldn't have to turn it in because they can see it just as much as I can,
Absolutely,
So
sure.
that's the question.
And I think what's important that you know too is that when those come in, I reach out to the community police sergeants and I say, this is the property we got. Can you hook us up? Can you go check it out? Can you assign whoever you're supposed to? I don't know if the community police sergeants are dealing with those, but they're a relationship I've established that they respond to me and they come back and say, Mike, this is what I did. So I have a good relationship for these vehicles. Motorcycle Unit 2, they call me and they go, Mike, here's the deal. I got this. I don't think it applies to us. I think it applies to you. And we go back and forth. And there's times that we think it applies to us, but when they argue it out, and they go, look, it's an RV backed up into the side of the yard, and, you know, I can tell you from the neighbors who let us on the property but didn't let us on the property that there's no tag. And I go, no, man, we'd be happy to take that one. So there's not any back and forth between us of not your problem, our problem. There's sometimes a miscommunication. We say it and they go look and the car is gone and they go, case closed, because that guy's at work. He's at Jostens or wherever else he's at when they go check. So that's where we are on that one. Anyone?
I think I'm caught up.
Okay.
Thank you.
In-street parking, that's enforced by the Topeka Police Department. We don't do those. I don't know what questions you would have for it. That's out in the street. I understand what you said that we have out in the street. I don't think our city prosecutors have my back on that to say that we go after cars in the street. I could be
Well,
wrong.
premises the street is included in the definition of premises in the IPMC. For years, we had problems because code was only dealing with what was on the property. PD was only dealing with one on the street, and the street one says it has to have not moved in 48 hours. And so people learned how to get over on that. So if they got a ticket, they just could open the door, didn't even have to run, and just move it 6 inches, move the chalk, done. And cars were sitting on the street for years, and that frustrated people
Absolutely
in certain
does.
neighborhoods.
And
so,
if we did it in the process we have, we would send them a notice saying move it in 10 days. They move it 4 feet, it's the same thing. But that takes.
but you've got the broader definition of inoperable at this point, and so you've got more than they had, and so that's something we had looked for years, so that we could tag team or whatever you want to call it.
Sure,
between
and we work with them on all those. They give us a call and go, hey, this is what we got, can you help? So we do what we can to help them.
Do you feel, I mean, I know that those don't occur as often, or at least they haven't come to me as often as they used to, but if you've got somebody who's playing it on the 48-hour thing on the street, are you able to work together on those?
I'm not getting a call back from the police department on somebody manipulating that, so I can't give you an answer.
Okay.
Okay? On private property, that was the next one. Do we have it? Yeah, we enforce it. We enforce the inoperable and the untagged vehicles. Police department has a small role in this, and that goes back to the unpaved surfaces of a vehicle parked in the back of the property for over 6 months. That's a really tough one to enforce for them, because you have to articulate to a judge that, you know, it's been there for 6 months, and if I take it and I go drive it today and I return it tomorrow, it's a new case. So that's in the middle of the code. I never knew that was a great place for it to be, but it's there, and it wasn't my place to argue and say it shouldn't be there. But that is one that if somebody takes it out and drives it, or an RV, RVs will sit, you know, all summer, and then they'll snowbird it out in the winter. But it did sit there for 4, 5, 6 months, and neighbors are complaining. But as soon as they move it, and they take it wherever they're taking it. But that's the only part on private property that the police really play a role besides the unpaved surfaces.
If it's registered, the car can
You can't have a vehicle in the backyard for extending 6 months, beyond 6 months. If it's not registered, that's us. We get denied. We just have to be able to see it. So a neighbor, if it's in the backyard, it's either we get it from the alley, or we get it from a neighbor, or as people are learning, they just back the car up against the house and you can't see the tag. And that's the game they're playing, and they're winning it by that, because I'm not going to go get a warrant. A judge isn't going to sign a warrant for me to go see if there's a tag on a car that I have no reason to think that there's not a tag.
Or they're covering it up.
Yeah, they're covering it up. I mean, I've had inspectors in the past and said, stop doing it. Said, put a car cover across the car and we can't do anything. I said, no, we don't play that game. Once you've learned that it's there, and then if the car cover shows up, you continue with the case. And then when you get there with the warrant and you lift up the car cover and see that the car has a tag, you put the car cover back, you walk out the property, and you don't serve the warrant. So that's where we go with those.
But that's on an unpaved surface.
No, that's on private property.
It's on private property.
That's going to be what we do. So it's unregistered. We go out and we cite it for unregistered on private property. The guy puts a car cover over it. We proceed with that, and we go ahead and get a warrant. And then if we're wrong, which I don't know if we ever have been, You remove the car cover and go, oh man, it's registered. The only weird one we're getting lately is people aren't putting their stickers on their cars. And their argument is that people steal the stickers. And they do. They steal stickers all the time, which I would recommend anybody listening, put your sticker on, take a razor blade and put an X through your sticker, because they steal stickers. So.
Time and my license plate was kind of square looking, and I thought, what is that? Somebody had just bent the whole end.
Oh, yeah, to take the sticker. And what was it? I think 3 years ago, I said, how easy, my sticker, it's time to put a new sticker on. So I just peeled all the stickers off, and I went, that was just too darn easy. Then all someone has to do is glue that whole little 8-pack of stickers I had, and I said, no, I'm razor blading them from now on. And so that's where we are with those. And that's where private property. Any questions on the private property? Not yet, not right now.
You've moved really fast, but the issue is that they get caught a lot of times where there are multiple departments or jurisdictions, and they all, it's been getting better and better in terms of figuring out who's in first position, who's in second position. But there were times as we've moved to this point where stuff just fell between the cracks.
Yeah, over the years, it was punted back and forth. I think that's why we sat down and we re-looked at the code. Or
if it's in a fenced yard, it's okay, so half the people are putting up fences.
And their thought process is, I can't see it. And if they may be right. If I can't gather the evidence, I can't gather the evidence.
The idea is coming from code less often.
Yes, yeah, I hope that none of my inspectors are saying build a fence and we don't see it. Graffiti, same type of notices, same notification as all the other ones. But one of the differences is we send a consent form with the graffiti notice, and we inform them if they're willing to sign the consent form, the city will paint over their graffiti without charging them. We'll do it for free. Our city doesn't have a lot of graffiti, and it's addressed pretty fast. Our goal is 24 hours with the consent form to get the graffiti removed. And again, free to the property owner. Notification, mirrors all the other cases. The owner's given 10 days to comply for removing the graffiti. If they don't, then we apply for a warrant, and we'll remove the graffiti either by painting it a very unattractive battleship gray, or we use a soda blaster on a lot of the cement surfaces to take it off. Our success for consent forms, we have 531 of them on file. So over the years, as we've notified people, we've had 531 signed. For 2019, we had 74 cases that notices were actually sent out. 54 of them, the people took care of them themselves. 9 of them we had to take care of with warrants. 106 were public service. This would be the ones that we received a consent form. So we didn't send notice. So you can add that up. That's 180 cases of graffiti, but 106 of them, we were able to go out and get rid of it right away because the people had signed the consent form. So that's where the quick removal was. And I go back to when I was on the police department, how bad our graffiti was and how frustrating it was and how much challenge I was putting on code enforcement, going, you need to figure out a solution. And my predecessor did. They came up with this solution, and they did a great job of getting it. So we knock out as much graffiti as quickly as we can. I see I misspelled results, but hopefully you guys know that means results.
I thought you went to a French class.
Plus, we utilize, or we cooperate with Shawnee County. We cooperate with Shawnee County Parks and Rec and also the school boards, because there's been vandalism on the schools in Seaman and out in Shawnee Heights and Washburn, and we will take the soda blaster out and remove the graffiti for them as well, because we think it affects our community. Even though those are rural schools, that still affects the quality of life of the city of Topeka, and we should play together. So, we've done every single school more than once, and we'll do it right away.
And there's no charge?
We don't charge them.
Okay. Quick question. Do you all have resources in-house or instructions for vinyl siding?
No. For vinyl siding, how to remove graffiti from vinyl siding? No.
Well, it's easy. Had to do it on my block one time, and so I would recommend adding that. There's simply it's a chemical compound that you can get at any hardware store, and I'd have to check and give you the name of it, but that gets most of it, because you can't use a soda blaster on vinyl, and you don't want to paint it. And then you use the Mr. Clean wipes. Takes it right off.
When they ask us, I'd be happy to share that with them.
Well, I'm
It's
surprised
very-
there haven't been more instances with vinyl siding.
And the ones that I have, the people call and go, what do I do? And I go, I can tell you that at the hardware store there is stuff.
Okay.
I don't want to tell you what.
Oh, as long as you're doing that.
Yeah, because I don't want, I go,
see it.
this is what you use, and find out you had steel siding, even though you told me vinyl. Or that you have vinyl made by 3M, and the vinyl made by Scotchgard says, do not use this product. I'm not going to tell you what to use.
Gotcha.
And find out
Okay.
that it's
As
damaged.
long as you're, giving the people the referrals
Yeah.
that they need.
Yeah, the unique hangup we have with graffiti is the code says that it's on buildings, and we have graffiti on semi-trailers. Matter of fact, on East 6, there's one that you drive by every day that's got graffiti on it, on boats, on cars, and on like the utility boxes. It doesn't fit in our code we still send notice, and we usually contact, especially the utilities, they'll contact us, go, what do you want us to do? We say, well, get rid of it. But when there's the code, we're looking at that, but it's not like we have a ton. We don't have
Well,
a,
that's what we're looking for. I mean,
Yeah.
if there are some policy things that we
Yeah.
should consider so that you've got what you need.
and that's one that we just kind of found out this last month, is we asked for a warrant for a boat and then found out that it's not a building. Yeah, so the judge said, I can't do it. He was absolutely right, he shouldn't
Okay.
have. So that was good. We don't have a ton of vehicles that get graffiti, and most vehicles that do are inoperative and we tow them away. But it happens, and I just, in my head, I can see the one on Southeast 6 that's got graffiti up and down the semi-trailer on a vacant lot where the people walked away from the property, where we demolished the property and cleaned it up. They're not coming to do it.
As long as we don't sign you up for rail cars, you'd be too busy.
Yeah, no, we're not doing rail cars. It had to be rail cars in the city of Topeka for X amount of days, because
That's
they
okay
go right
then.
through, yeah.
Still be busy.
Yeah. And then just so you know, because I gave you the results for the different types of properties or different types of cases, I walked through housing, and I walked through demolitions, and I walked through graffiti, and I walked through vehicles, and I said, why don't I throw in one by sanitation by the numbers for you too?
Okay.
So, in 2019, we cited 2,606 properties for sanitation issues. Voluntary compliance was 2,137, which was an 82% volunteer compliance rate, which I was shocked. Because I figured it was still at 65%-ish, and it's not. But the big problem is there's 474 forced compliance, which means that we served a warrant, we went and we cleaned it. That's a lot of work. That's a lot going on for a two-man abatement crew and then our inmate crew, especially when we get to 40-yard roll-offs, et cetera. One of the challenges to my inspectors is if we ever do a 40-yard roll-off on a property, that you check that property every 2 weeks, and you cite it as soon as a tire is put on the property. Because we shouldn't be doing multiple roll-offs over the years on the same property. That is a goal, but I can promise you that we clean a property, we go to lunch, we drive back by, and the people are dropping off a truckload of garbage on the property again, because they're collectors or scrap collectors or whatever they want. And they collect all this and they go, I'm not going to sell it until the price of metal goes up. So they just collect it, and it builds high. We get another 40-foot roll-off, and we take it over and over. And that's one where it was like $8,000. I go, this guy's going to run out of options, because the tax is going to come after him. He paid it. Would have been a lot simpler to just keep his property clean, or just go buy $8,000 of property out in somewhere that doesn't have this code.
It's an entrepreneur.
Yeah. So I just thought I'd share that, because I didn't share that when we did sanitation, nor did I
No,
think
appreciate that. And I mean, are there some things that I think somewhere along the way I included in questions, this one being an example, are there some strategies that you all have thought of, particularly if it's policy related, but not limited, that we could add to the code to head off these kinds of expensive, what we all want is to have the city look nice and be safe and to avoid repeat violations, however one does that.
What we have to as a city is change the norm of what acceptable behavior is. I can't do it through code enforcement regulation alone. I can promise you that I have people that 20 violation repeat. They clean it up, they start again the very next day. They clean it up, they start. The norm has to be changed within this community when it comes to this. And it isn't, and just go look at one neighborhood versus another. The norm is you're not leaving your trash cans out after 5 o'clock on Friday. The next neighborhood leaves a trash can out for 7 days a week. That's against Shawnee County's policy for leaving your trash can out, but it's not acceptable. But they do, because that's the norm in that neighborhood. That needs to change. And littering, you know, I looked at Texas when I came back with the Don't Mess with Texas, was a litter campaign. And it grew from that to, I'm proud of my state, don't you mess with Texas. The attitude we have to have as Topekans is, let's have a beautiful, safe, and clean town. And we have to spread that from me to anybody I have contact with and the people that I socialize with, that it's unacceptable to treat your property as a dumping ground, or sit out at the McDonald's and throw your McDonald's bag out the window. Yeah. That's wrong, and the norm has to change. And that's what I'm trying with code enforcement, to be part of that solution. And we're working to be in that solution, but I can promise you that code enforcement can't change it for a community. They can only do their part to help change it.
Right.
And
But I personally appreciate that, because in terms of this process and going through it with this committee and then wrapping it up, part of that is to say, how do we change that cultural norm? What do we want Topeka to look like in 5 years? What do we want it to look like in 10 or 20 years? And how big should our staff need to be in terms of recidivism and you guys, everybody works so hard, but all the multiple visits, all the time that all the cases open, closed, open, closed, open, closed. So where are we trying to go with that? So that as much as possible, and with what we can do toward that, or getting partners, whatever we need to do, that we can be moving that way.
And to
Sure.
help on our part, we attended well over 100 community meetings. We'll go to anybody that invites us to their business to present to them. We did health and safety fairs for different corporations. We go out there and talk to the people there and give them information. If you want us to talk to you, we will go. If Channel 27, 49, or anybody calls me and says, we want an interview for this problem property, I said, when do you want to meet me? I'm happy to speak to you. Because I know we're doing a good job and we're doing everything we can by law. Let's get the word out. Let's hold this conversation. This isn't acceptable. Somebody's pulling up in a pickup truck and dumping down this side street. This isn't appropriate. So on our part, we're willing to work with anybody that wants to talk to us.
And that's what's in this fine print little slide that I'm looking at.
Oh, yeah. You asked about consistency. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I'll wait.
Oh, you asked about consistency and how am I making sure that we're consistent, which is a pretty big deal. All our inspectors are certified through the ICC, which takes, there's about 5 or 6 books they got to study. They got to go take a pretty serious test to learn all the books. They're certified through the Kansas Association of Code Enforcement case, where we attend 2 conferences yearly that talk about, probably, let's see, it's a 3-day conference, so they talk probably about 9 topics in code enforcement. And, you know, they vary at each time so that it's worthwhile to go to conferences. Each inspector goes to 1 of those conferences. Every new inspector has to go to 3 of those conferences in a row, and then they get to only go 1. There may be times I send them to 2, but you're really adding up money, because they send us to Dodge City for these conferences, and when you talk about the budget, I gotta be smart. So they're going to 1 a year. We have staff meetings every other week, and we focus on training, policy, and expectations. We talk about how you enforced codes and what issues you ran into, or what unique problems, because we come up with unique problems all the time. And then we make sure that we have a consensus. Right? My direction is that this is how you do it. We just had one with trailers and sanitation, where prosecution had told us that we can't touch trailers with sanitation. It was because of how we presented the question. And prosecution thought I wanted to tow the trailers. So I was presenting the question incorrectly. And so then when they finally realized what I was meaning was the garbage in a trailer. You go, no, you can get that if it's on the property. Well, then we have people that clean their property, put it on the trailer, and we show up, and you can kind of tell the trailer's gonna go someday, but you don't know when someday is, and someday might be 4 years, and some days might be next Saturday. And I had inspectors going, well, I closed that case. I said, absolutely, you don't close that case. So in the whole group, we said, you don't close that case, but what I would say you do is you drop a door hanger saying, you didn't complete it, please call me if you plan on removing this. And then the guy should call if he gets his notice and go, hey, I'm removing it on Saturday. Go, well, then we're not coming back till Monday. If it's not done on Monday, we'll start on our warrant process. So that's something like when we're meeting, that's what we're doing all the time. We have a weekly meeting with the city prosecutor where we talk about how we're enforcing the codes and what the expectation to get the proper wording and the proper, so that it fits everything that we're doing. We updated our SOPs in 2019 and they're going to be reviewed yearly. The judge and the prosecutor review all our warrants, include the way the inspectors write the cases so that it's uniform and it's consistent. Field inspectors reviewing cases. Well, I got a field supervisor reviewing cases for accuracy and consistency. He has been really tied up on picking up the slack for missing 2 inspectors because we had 2 open slots. I have 8 now. He just released the 8th one out on his own. So he shows up at all the warrants, or a majority of the warrants. I will not tell you goes to all, it's impossible. He goes to the warrants, he looks at the cases, he reviews them, he looks at where the inspector is and the amount of cases they're working per year so that we know that everybody's consistent and everybody's producing approximately the same amount of caseload and casework, and looking at that. And I have frequent meetings with the inspectors and list my expectations of what I want from them. You know, even though I have a field inspector, I have an open door. The only thing I won't allow is for them to ask me a question that they're not willing to ask him, unless it's a personnel issue. But if they're wanting to get something done, I go, you go through him and we'll do it together to keep the chain of command going. Yeah.
Thanks. Again, Mike, I think you guys have done a great job, and I appreciate you educating us and being just really patient with us. But we receive these calls, and we need to know the answers to help you guys as well. Having said that, we got a few minutes here, Chair. I didn't know, I know we asked Mike last time to kind of set our agenda so we can kind of see what we're going to do next month.
Right.
I didn't know, Mike, if you had any suggestions. I knew this was really good. It fell
Hey,
right in line.
I've shared what we do, how we do it. Our
that
policies
it?
are online. I'm to where, yeah, I mean, there's small things, but our billing process isn't something that you need. And we bill, you know, I mean, one of the things I didn't talk about, but we bill just like any other department. So I'm going through the direction of you all because I've presented what we do.
I know city manager at, I want to say the last meeting, one of the things that came up as a question was the staff was able to identify how much they billed out, but had no idea how much we'd actually collected in return on fines, fees, and abatement costs. And that would be good to know if it's possible to get. I think we're at the point where it would require homework. You're the new guy, but maybe you'd have a longer list, who knows, of, if what we want to do is look at, two options. One would be to talk through the team up to clean up a little bit more in terms of how that's gone and feedback if people want to do that. That has come up. But either do that immediately or come back with the lists out of these discussions, are there policy issues that we think deserve continuing further in, both from the staff as well as from the committee, so that we can kind of pull together if there are any policy issues we want to look at, if there are any initiatives that we would want to propose either specifically or that we seek, such as making the city beautiful, so that we can pull together out of this comprehensive review whether there are some action steps that this committee would want to explore further and or recommend.
Well, and that's fine if we come back with a discussion. I just want to make sure that they understand what we're wanting so we don't waste
Absolutely.
anybody's time.
Absolutely.
And then another thing that I would like to see on the agenda is, we're getting ready to move about 60 homeless people. And I'd like to get a report from Sergeant Clam to see how that's going, to see what's needed from this committee, if anything, or just to get a general report of what's going on there.
This committee did deal with that last year and a half.
And I would just like an update on that. I think that would be beneficial for us, so we're just not slammed, and to see how housing is doing to help. Just an update, I think, would be good.
I have a little bit of information. It won't be the same as what Pam could provide you, but it is a simple review of what's.
Okay, sure, absolutely. I just worry, my concern is if they're gonna move all 60 of them, that's a lot of people, and I think we might get some complaints because it's not us, but it's Santa Fe, but not everybody understands that it's Santa Fe property.
Right.
And so I just want us to be prepared for when people tell us how bad we are because we don't care about them, so we kind of know what's
Right.
going on.
I don't know the exact numbers, but I know, for example, Union Pacific, there were only three campsites for the Union Pacific that were going to be moved. I don't think there's going to be a number of the campsites that aren't going to be touched at all because they're still on rescue mission property. The other thing that we're doing is Sergeant Clam and the Homeless Task Force and the mission have been talking to the individuals that are camped on the Union Pacific property and the BNSF property, and letting them know that as far as they're concerned, that is on their property. There will be property lines that will be marked to ensure that it's clear that their property, that they need to move. But it is not the wholesale movement of Tent City.
Okay,
So it is just simply Union Pacific, which only has a few, and then a few on a number that are on BNSF property. And so it will be not wholesale. I don't think it'll be as, obviously for the individuals that are on those properties, it will be a hard situation. But the meetings have already occurred letting them know what's going on, and we're providing some guidance as to where they go next if they're on that property. And so that's ongoing with Sergeant Clam and the task force. So hopefully, when the day comes that they're going to make them move, that they will have already moved.
have a
And that's
clear
what I expect to have happen, is that they will have already moved and there will not be a conflict. Now, can tell you that in the past, there have been a number of individuals that have made the statement, I'm not moving, you'll have to move me. And so obviously, we're working to try and get the right people in touch with them to help them understand this is not going to be an option. They will come with bulldozers and they will take your property away. So your best bet is to work with us to find a place to go so that you don't lose the little that you do have.
thank you for that update, City Manager, because that's my concern, and then it's going to focus right back on us.
Yeah.
Because
And
people don't understand the process,
Yeah.
and
And I think that's where both railroads have done a pretty good job, is at least providing us a pretty good advance notice of their intention. And actually, we can thank them from the fact that they looked at doing this back in August, September timeframe and agreed to back off and let some time pass for us to try and find places for those individuals. But eventually, their decision is going to be followed up on, and that's what's occurring.
thank you. Thank you, City Manager. Thank you, Manager.
You're welcome, and if I could follow up just briefly, from the Homeless Task Force met, and the announcement actually came from them. So this has also engendered another round of partners through the Homeless Task Force and others from the community who are pulling together to try and work with people to offer long-term opportunities,
Yes.
or at least good alternatives, and get
Right.
people connected with services and so on, correct?
But we'll work to get Sergeant Clam back to kind of, even if we're past that time frame, by the time you meet again, at least give you an out brief as to how things went, what occurred, what was the result of that.
Thank
So
you.
We'll make plan for that.
Thank you very much.
Okay, in terms of closing then, is this third Monday at 3 to 5 a good time, or as good as any? Shall we
good for
plan
me.
our next meeting then for the 16th? Or are you going to be in some parade someplace?
Oh, I wasn't sure I was
Well,
coming
he's
back
done.
at the next one, but
Well, if what we want to do is come back and talk about code again, my thought would be, do people want to talk about Team Up to Clean Up before we move forward to wrap this together? Yes, no?
I don't care.
I don't really care. Is it working?
I'm sorry, I missed all that right there.
Team Up to Clean Up.
Yes. Oh, is it working? Yes, it's absolutely working.
Fantastic. We don't need to talk about it.
And it's getting better. It's,
It had a rocky start. I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of it's been in my district, but it's getting better.
where the success comes from is the community involvement. If it's just city employees doing it, we go up, we clean it, we leave, and it all starts over again. We've found that the neighborhoods that will make the commitment to involve themselves are the ones that have been successful. And right now, our next one's gonna be High Crest West, and we got churches that are getting involved that wanna run with that one, and we got community involvement over there. So the goal, this shouldn't be Team Up Cleanup shouldn't be focused on just city, taking care of city stuff.
That's right.
This is part of, remember when we talked about I wanna change the norm, that if we can get the community that's in that neighborhood to change their attitude of what's acceptable, and then and make the efforts, because if we go in and clean it, there's no incentive to clean it.
Correct, and that,
So-
maybe we should go ahead and put that on, and we'll just go over it. It has changed, and you've learned some things that are critical to make it work better.
Yes,
Again, it's close to 5, so we need to wrap up. Let's go ahead and put that on there, and then let's move on to looking at a proposed action, which would be goals, policy, and initiatives, with contributions from members of the committee as well as from staff, in terms of anything that we could carry forward to wrap this process up.
Sounds good.
And a homeless update. March 16th, 3 to 5, wherever Liz gets us a place. Thank you. Thank you so much. Really been great.
This meeting's adjourned.
It is.
Adjourn the meeting, Madam Chair.
Well, when you're standing up before you give me a chance, what am I gonna do?